but yeah, come to Florida.
I see we have some new people popping on. As you're getting on, please open up that chat. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen on the desktop, and let us know where you're joining us from. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I know we have many more people that are going to be joining us, but we want to get started for everyone. So, well, welcome to our webinar, Nathaniel's Hope. This webinar, we want to give you guys the opportunity to hear some information about special needs ministry and ask some questions and see how we might be able to help you in that. But we are so glad you're joining us. And I'm Carrie. I'm with the team here at Nathaniel's Hope. I work with our churches through Buddy Break and do a lot of other things. And then in the other screen that way for me, maybe a different screen way for you, but that's Marie Cook, our co-founder and executive director. So she's going to be sharing quite a bit of great information today. I'm going to go away for a little bit and then I'll come back at the end, but just want to go ahead and turn it on over to her.
All right. Thanks, Carrie. Well, welcome. So glad that you could be with us today. We're very excited. We're pretty passionate about sharing about ministry to kids with special needs. And thanks for joining us today to learn more. And hopefully we'll answer some of your questions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you here. Okay, let me get this here. All right. One more second. Don't you love technology? Okay, here we go. So today we're talking about we can't have a special needs ministry because, and I know those of you who are joining today are coming from all different places, and you may have kids with special needs that you're ministering to right now. They might be in your congregation. You don't know what to do. You might be wanting to anticipate them and just learn a little bit more. So we're going to be addressing that today. We're with Nathaniel's Hope, and our mission is to kind of share hope, the hope of Christ. Everything we do, we want to equip you to be able to minister and to welcome families into your congregation. But we really are about celebrating kids with all kinds of special and unique needs, as well as equipping the community and the church to know how to reach this community. So just a little bit about my story and how I got involved in this. I had been in church staff for 10 years working with youth, and then God surprised us with a little boy named Nathaniel Timothy Cook, a treasured gift of God that completely changed our lives. And if it's okay, I'd like to just share just a little brief video that tells our story, and then you'll know why I'm so passionate to want to help you, and we'll get on with the training here. Hi, we're Tim and Marie Cook, Nathaniel's mom and dad, and we're here to tell you about our journey with Nathaniel.
Our journey began with our son on June 6, 1997. And our son's name was Nathaniel Timothy Cook, which actually means treasured gift from God. He was our third child. We had two daughters, a 3-year-old who was Ashley and a 5-year-old who was Brianna. And immediately we were thrust into caring for our little boy at Arnold Palmer Hospital.
He spent the first 89 days of his life just fighting for his life. And I remember it was such a hard, trying time to try and raise our two daughters while having a son that we were fighting for his life every day.
And after 89 days, we took him home, not to a normal nursery, but actually to a small hospital room that had a heart monitor and a sat monitor, and he was on oxygen. He was on IV. He had a feeding tube. And Marie found herself at a place of caring for him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
We actually consider ourselves RPs, registered parents, because we had to really equip ourselves to care for a child that had multiple medical needs.
And actually caring for our son, it actually consumed our lives. It was our whole life evolved around caring for a son. I told the people I worked with at Regal Boats here in Orlando that I had these 5 F's. I have faith, family, friends, finances, and flexibility, these 5 F's, and we were barely making. And I said at the time, I don't know how people that only have 2 F's or 3 F's, how can they possibly make it when we're barely making it with these 5 F's?
Oftentimes families are in survival mode, just taking everything it takes in you just to care for your child, just to get through the day. And so we became part of that community. It was really tough.
He had numerous surgeries in his life, actually more than 7 of them, but 3 of them were for craniosynostosis. And that 2 of them we had here in Orlando, and then we took him to Dallas, Texas for a third. And the surgery went well, but he ended up getting pneumonia. And during the course of that time in the hospital, there's a nurse that's standing over our son's bed, and she's weeping. And she says, there's just something about this boy. There's just something about this boy. And as we begin to talk, we find that she's of like faith. And she says, I don't normally do this, but can I pray for you? And we said, of course, we're spiritually bankrupt, physically bankrupt, emotionally bankrupt, after just fighting for our son's life again, 11 days in Dallas. And as she prays, she didn't pray a typical prayer. She prayed that my son's purpose would be fulfilled. We thought kind of an odd prayer because he never walked or talked or ate with his mouth, but she prayed that his purpose would be fulfilled.
A year later, unexpectedly, without our permission, he had a change of address from earth to heaven when he passed away in my arms. And we realized at that point that that wasn't the end, but it was the beginning, that God wanted us to steward our whole journey with Nathaniel. Because from the time that we found out we had a child with special needs to the time that God took him home, it was a journey, an unanticipated journey, a path that we never expected.
There's a paraphrase quote by author, philosopher named Soren Kierkegaard that says, we live life forward, but we understand life backwards. We live life forward, but we understand life backwards. And so we were living life forward for 4.5 years. And now, after his death, we realized that we needed to take that which we learned and apply it to life. And we realized that we needed to do that by starting a ministry to cheer on families that only have 2 Fs or 3 Fs. And on June 6, 2002, on Nathaniel's birthday, we dedicated a ministry called Nathaniel's Hope.
So Nathaniel's Hope is dedicated to pull alongside families and just
Oops, sorry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. So that's kind of our story. And, you know, our story is just one of so many that are out there. There's over 20 million kids and teens with special needs or unique needs in the US today. And they're out there with all unique stories like this. So anyway, I want to go ahead and kind of roll into ministering to kids with special needs or unique needs, who we like to call our VIPs because we hate the term disabled, handicapped, because they're kids first. And that could be like a very varied combination of kids. So when you kind of say, well, I've got kids with special needs coming, I want to get equipped, it's very hard to sometimes do a cookie cutter approach, because you may have kids with physical disabilities that show up. You may have kids with intellectual or cognitive disabilities. You may have kids with medical disabilities or hidden disabilities, meaning that they show up and they look really typical, but then they begin to manifest behaviors. And we say, don't those parents ever discipline those kids? But really, they may have a hidden disability that isn't visible physically, like autism or such as that. Kids with chronic illnesses, kids with life-threatening illnesses that unless God intervenes, you know, they might have a shortened lifespan. Kids who are medically fragile. So this is not a technical, this is just kind of our definition of VIP kids to help you understand that all the different buckets of kids that are out there, because God's made us all so unique. So when we start looking into why we can't have a special needs ministry, we start talking about ministering to this community of kids. It's not like you can say, this is what you do to minister to kids with special needs, because God made them all so unique and different. And just like you and I are all unique and very different. But when we talk about special needs ministry and reasons why we can't reach this community of kids, we might have things that come up, like we may say, we don't have enough volunteers. And maybe you're watching today and you think, man, I can't even barely staff my typical kids ministry, let alone a ministry that's going to involve a lot more unique needs. We're not ready to handle all of the families. Boy, if we open up our doors, they are just going to flood us and like you wouldn't believe. And we're not going to be able to handle the need that's out there. Maybe your church hasn't opened yet, and so you're thinking, I can't minister to this community. We're not even open right now. Maybe you're worried about a budget. This is going to cost a lot of money, and we just don't have. COVID has really killed our budget, and I just don't have the money to start. Maybe you say, we have a small church. I mean, how can we minister to kids with special needs? Because we got a little church, but you know, the church down the street, they're really big and they're resourced well, and they're already doing it. So, you know, I really don't need to think about doing it. Maybe you've never worked with kids with special needs before, whether you've gone to school to do the ministry that you're in, or whether you have just been grown up in the congregation. You know, you've never worked with kids, and maybe you're like me. Before I had my son Nathaniel, I would high five kids with disabilities on Sunday and thought I was doing my job because I'd never worked with this community before. And it wasn't until we entered the community that I realized how much this community was in need, and how I could get equipped to minister to this community. Maybe you say, well, we don't have kids with special needs out there. Well, do you know that only 10% of families that are impacted by disability attend church? So I want to tell you that maybe they're not in your church yet, but they're out in your community. And another statistic tells us that 1 in 10 kids under the age of 14 have some type of disability. So chances are that they may be in your congregations, and you may not even realize that they have a disability or a unique need of some kind. You know, you may be afraid, you know, it can be intimidating working with kids. That's kind of a creepy picture, I know, sorry about that. But it can be a little bit intimidating if you've never worked with this community before, to work with it. And maybe you're just overwhelmed, just keeping up with life and adding on another population and being intentional about that is going to be a little bit difficult. But whatever the need is, or whatever your reason is for maybe being a little bit nervous about kind of diving in to minister to this community, I think it's important that we understand some of the challenges faced by this community, because as we grapple with our own fears and insecurities and reasons why maybe we can't really become intentional to reach this community, maybe if we understood the needs of the community, that might help move the needle a little bit for us. So I'd like to share a little video, just a short video that kind of some parents will share their perspective of what it's like having a child with a disability, for you to see, to hear from them.
Every day I think he's close to normal, and then we go outside or we get around other kids that are 10 just like him, and I see the difference, and it's like every day's a reminder that we're not like everybody else.
And even though she's always asking me, Mom, can we have another brother or sister? Can you make sure it's not handicapped? I can't play with them like other brothers and stuff.
So I grieve for the fact that my daughter will never know what a normal sibling is like. I grieve for the fact that, he'll never know how beautiful they are.
When the doctors met with us and they said that statistically, a lot of these marriages, either they bond and grow stronger together or they split up, but the majority of them split up. I really didn't think at that time that that's what would happen to mine, but it did.
When we had a special needs child born into our family, we realized that all our dreams would change. It was not what we expected. It was totally different than anything we had ever imagined.
Keeping her alive, was a lot of time we spent, not knowing if she was going to make it through till the next day.
If you could step a day into our life, and I were to say one word, it would be consuming, all-consuming. The all-consuming never goes away.
So maybe for some of you watching this, maybe this is kind of a different perspective that maybe you've never gotten close enough to a family to hear some of the heart pains that may be associated with raising a child with a disability, some of the struggles, some of the challenges, and really disability affects the whole family. It doesn't just affect the child that you're thinking that you have to develop a special ministry for, but it affects the whole family. It affects the siblings. It affects the moms and dads. It affects the grandpas, and how they can interact with the church as well. When we had our daughters, I had been in full-time ministry for 10 years, and yet on Sunday mornings, it was difficult to even get my typical daughters to church, because if our son was sick or had some kind of need that morning that kept us from being able to get in the car and go to church as a family, this now affected my daughter's ability to be able to attend church, and be a part of, their kids' ministry and everything. So as committed as I was, that was heartbreaking, and just, couldn't do it all. So it affects everybody. So when you think about ministering to special needs community, think about the family, not just the child that is the one with a disability, but the siblings, the moms and dads, and everything. Especially during COVID, this has been a very difficult space for these families to be in. We've all experienced COVID and have learned what isolation is like, and what it's like just being cut off from the community, not being able to go to church. We've been in this pandemic that's been so difficult. I want to tell you that these families, it's for whatever we've all faced that don't have children with disabilities, it's been like 100 times or more harder for these families, because their resources have been cut off. Their special resources for schools and therapies and all that, they've had to go to become, the medical personnel, to become the therapist, in addition to doing from their jobs from home while managing a child that, could have significant behavioral issues, and just even trying to do the maintenance of daily life, of going to the store and buying food when we've had to be, so careful about catching COVID. But it's been such a hard and painful and overwhelming season for these families. And, as a pandemic, hopefully things begin to open up, as they are in many places. And we continue life becomes maybe a little bit more normal, whatever that new normal is. For some of these families, they're going to stay in the state of pandemic because they live in isolation, because oftentimes we're not equipped to welcome them into our churches, so they can't find that community. So we have an opportunity to really reach this community. So when you think about it, I know that sometimes we get hung up on programs. Like, I got to bring a program in, and I have to have all of these facilities set up and everything. But I want to really challenge you, when you think about ministering to kids with special needs and unique needs, kids with disabilities, to just think about starting with one. Whoever God has already brought to your church, begin looking at that child and figuring out, how do I begin putting together a plan for this child? How do I begin ministering to this family? What can I do to practically and be intentional about my ministry? And because their needs are so unique, like we talked about all those different types of kids with disabilities out there, what they could be, whether it's a physical, cognitive, whatever it may be. So as you start with the one, begin to look to how to minister to that one and how to integrate that in. But for the sake of this webinar today, I do want to talk about a way that you can it can be a win for you to develop a little bit of a program to reach that one, or to reach 100 kids at the same time. But it's a way to help begin to equip your team. As you sit here and say, what can I do? What can I do? As I said about the pandemic, one of the hardest things about the pandemic is that we've been so isolated and trapped, and it's been so hard for families to get a break, which is why I'm showing you the Kit Kat bar. You may be familiar with the old commercial that, if you can get it in your head here, give me a break, give me a break, give me a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Well, as you think about getting a break, and that Kit Kat bar, that's really what our families most desperately have needed during this pandemic. And even when the pandemic moves on, is a break from, from their everyday normal responsibilities. Because oftentimes they just can't call the girl down the street to help them. They need something called respite. So what is respite? Maybe you've heard that term before, respite. Well, I like to think about it. As you travel and you're on a plane, and you're on a plane, and the announcement comes over and says, well, if the oxygen masks come down, be sure that you put your own oxygen mask on before giving it to your child, which I just took a few flights this week, and it was very funny to hear they're telling you now to take your mask off before you put your oxygen mask on. I thought, okay, that was probably very smart to tell me that. But the whole fact is that, the person, the caregiver, has to take care of themselves first before they can take care of their child. So respite is kind of helping caregivers take care of themselves, giving them a break so that they can be better parents. So it was kind of holding up their arms and giving them that cup of cold water in Jesus' name. So when you think about respite and the tremendous need that this community has had, why should my church consider respite? Well, as we know how taxing this season has been for us with COVID, as I said earlier, these families live oftentimes in the state year round. I want to read this letter to you from a mom. One day we had called her. We partner with churches all over the country to help them get equipped to minister to this community. And in this one case, we've been working closely with this family at a respite program, and they hadn't shown up in a few weeks. And so we were a little bit concerned about why had they shown up. So we called and they didn't respond back. And then a few days later, we got this letter back that says, we have almost nowhere to turn and we are in a situation that is extremely trying. Madeline was up most of last night screaming. Molly was up the night before yelping. Megan is home with the flu, but is nonverbal, so we didn't think she was sick until she was very sick. As you know, this is so tiring. I like to think I have endless energy and hope, but I do not. So I need to reach out to others for help. As I see it, we are all one big family when it comes to raising Megan, Molly, and Maddie. Matt and I are the everyday people, and you are the line behind us. You are all what gives us strength to get up every night with one or all of them. When we see something in the paper about parents who lose it, we always say, why didn't they ask for help? And so I'm saying, help. Yet so few care to hear us, but you all do, and it's appreciated more than can be expressed. I need to just have quiet sometimes to clear my head and not be responsible. I need to sit down and eat. I need to take a shower. I need to see my husband as a husband and not a fellow caretaker. When he's away, I need to regroup, start over, get my house clean and ready for the rest of the weekend. We need to go to the store and be able to shop and stay at the store for as long as we need to without leaving because of a tantrum. It's vital to us as a functioning family. We moved here for school, but we have no family here that can help us. You have become our family, and now we rely upon you as family. Wow, is such a sobering letter, to hear the heart's cry of this one mom. This is one cry out of millions of families that are out there, And so you ask the question, what would Jesus do? If Jesus, were here today in person, how would he respond to these? Well, Matthew 25:40 says, whatever you've done for the least of the brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. Now, listen, I am not saying that the community of those that are impacted by disability or have any type of disability or unique need is any less, but there are those of us who are stronger in the body and those of us who are weaker. And those of us who are stronger have the responsibility to wrap our arms around this community and to help them and do whatever we can to cheer them on to get to that finish line. And in this case, it may be that respite is the thing that is needed for that. Matthew 10:42 says, if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who's my disciple, I tell you that person will certainly not lose their reward. I like to think of respite care being that cup of cold water in Jesus' name to families to help them on their journey with that. So you might say, well, we don't have any kids with special needs, or we don't have a lot of kids with special needs. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure where to find them. Well, let me tell you how respite can help you find these kids and why respite can be a win-win-win or win-win-win-win, 4 wins. Let's talk about these 4 wins. First of all, at a respite care program, meaning if your church for once a month opens up its door for 3 hours and just plays with kids and ministers to kids with special needs for 3 hours to give, for them to have some fun. It's a time that is totally focused on this community and kids can have fun. So on Sunday morning, I would dare to say that most of the time when you are trying to run a whole typical ministry with a lot of kids, you're trying to take these kids that have unique needs and you're trying to fit them into what the big program is. And sometimes by doing that, some of their needs are not being met. So at a respite care program, you can totally focus 3 hours of ministry on these kiddos and minister to their unique needs. If they get a one-on-one volunteer to work with them, they get all this attention, and you're bringing Christ to them in a way that they'll be able to grasp and to understand in a different way. But it also gives the kids community. It's so hard for kids with special needs to find their place in the body of Christ sometimes, because we just don't maybe make room for that to happen. So it's so cool when that can happen within the contents of a respite care program. I love this little letter that this boy wrote in school. He goes, "Dear Oliver, I need to go to Buddy Break." That's actually the name of our respite program, because I want to see my friends, love Trevor. And, he's looking forward to that place where he can have community, because oftentimes this group of kids is often kids that aren't invited to the birthday parties. They're not included easily in activities that would happen within their normal range of being a child. So this gives them a place to belong, which is pretty awesome. Another awesome thing is that parents get a break. So I mentioned earlier, it is so hard for parents to get a break. During the pandemic, it's been hard for all parents to get a break, right? But parents that have kids with disabilities, it's just not as easy to call a person to be able to watch their child, because oftentimes it can be intimidated. They don't feel equipped. And so when we can give parents a break, and we can give them that physical break, that mental break, that spiritual break, where they can just kind of be able to care for themselves for 3 hours, to kind of unplug and not be responsible. What a blessing that is. We've heard time and time again from different programs. We serve with churches in 37 states around the country. And we've heard multiple times about how moms will just go in a parking lot and recline their chair in their car and go to sleep in the church parking lot, because they can never get a break. And they're just so desperate for sleep, for rest, and so it's something the church can do, is to provide for that, so they can put that oxygen mask on and be able to be equipped to be better caregivers. So that's pretty awesome. Another thing that's awesome about doing respite is training volunteers. So I know that as you begin to open up the door and say, okay, I want to be intentional. I see this community out here. I've got a few kids in my church and I want to help them, but I've got to find a way to train my volunteers. It's really hard to train on a Sunday morning when you have your full program operating and becoming, and you've got all your typical kids. It's hard to focus on the unique needs that these kids might have, kids with special needs, VIP kids. And so when you can take your volunteers and kind of train them in a setting where they've got 3 hours to chase that kid with autism and figure out how to get him to stop, and not do that on the Sunday morning, but do it in another time. And really, volunteer training is really about building relationships with kids. We're afraid of what we don't know, right? And as we spend time with people, in this case, kids with special needs, we begin to get to know them, and our fears are come down, and we learn how to communicate with them. We learn about their unique needs. And it's kind of like a hands-on lab that you're training your volunteers, so that then you can take these volunteers and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, would you be a buddy to Joey on Sunday morning, so that mom and dad can go to church on Sunday? Would you kind of be his shadow, his sidekick? Would you kind of integrate him, and some of his unique needs? So can you help us figure out how to kind of insert him into the big program that's happening on Sunday mornings? And sometimes that might be that the needs are so great that they maybe need to have a unique space to go, but sometimes it's just a matter of understanding things that might trigger that child, that if you can jump ahead of that, they can be fully integrated into the Sunday morning program without having to put them in that special classroom. So it's a great training ground to train your volunteers. And then lastly, the community is reached, and it is an incredible missions opportunity. You talk about right now, it's very hard to travel and do regular missions work right now in other countries, because countries are closed because of COVID. But this is your Jerusalem, Like, as I said earlier, only 10% of people that attend with disability attend church. We have this incredible community around us where we can reach out and minister to families that need Christ. And we've seen all kinds of people of all faiths come in, not Christian faiths, but people that need Jesus have come into respite care programs, because the church is giving that cup of cold water in Jesus' name and saying, we love you, we care. They're opening up their arms, and it's becoming a great missions outreach that the church can reach out to this community in a lot of different unique ways. So that's why I say respite is a win-win-win-win, Again, kids have fun. They find community. Parents get that much needed break. Volunteers can be trained through this. And then finally, it could be a great missions outreach. And so let's look and see what a program may look like, what a typical respite program is looking like. And for the sake of this, you're going to see stuff with Buddy Break because that's what we do. But I just want to show you the concept of what respite can do. And like I said earlier, typically it's maybe a 3-hour time window where you're inviting kids in with disability to just kind of hang out with volunteers from your church so parents can get a break. So here's a little look into a respite program.
What does Buddy Break mean for us? It's time alone. It's time for us to be able to reconnect and go get some things done that we haven't been able to do. And for our children, especially for Elijah, it's an opportunity to come have some fun, be a little independent, and hang out with a buddy that he looks forward to hanging out with and having a wonderful time with.
I've been doing Butter Break for a month or two now, and I've just really been interacting with Elijah in grade school during the band and during worship, and I knew he did Buddy Break, so I wanted to do it with him. And it's a really great experience for both of us just because he's a great kid, and I love being around him.
He looks forward to it so much every month. They ask, when is Buddy Break? Is Buddy Break this weekend? Is Buddy Break this weekend? Especially Elijah. He also has 2 siblings who are typical who come, and they love to come too. But for Elijah to come and hang out with Ben, he gets to play his guitar. Today he led worship, which was just awesome for him since that's what he wants to do when he grows up.
My favorite thing is guitar. Ben loves me so because he passes guitar with me, right? Mm-hmm. And every time he practices, and he gets better and better every day.
I think that gives him an opportunity to stretch his independence and kind of, show his personality a little bit more.
Here I
go! For Elijah, I know it's just really been a blessing, and he just really, really, really loves it. And like Nick said, for us too, we kind of get a couple hours to go and, have lunch without kids and actually talk without interruption. So Buddy Break is just an amazing thing, and we love it. And Elijah loves it. Our other boys love it. It's just such a blessing to so many families. We just can't say thank you enough.
So here's the incredible ending to the story. That video that you just watched was recorded about 10 years ago. It's a little bit dated, right? 10 years ago, but here's why we like to show it. Recently, actually, this was about 1.5 years ago that I visited this program, and this was like 10 years later from when this video was shot. So this is Ben and Elijah 10 years later, still doing worship together. And that friendship has formed, and it's been an incredible place for Elijah to find his place in the body of Christ, and how we've included him, how we found a way to include him, and how he's growing, and how he and Ben have had this incredible friendship. So it's such a great thing of how a program or like a respite event where you're building relationships. I mean, had these boys not had a platform to come together and build relationship, they wouldn't be here 10 years later, continuing in friendship like this. So that's one of my favorite stories that I like to see that has come out of doing respite care. So a little bit when you're considering respite, here's some of the things that you have to consider, as a location, which your church can be a great location using classrooms and using your facilities. Don't need to have any special places, but just rooms that can be designated for different activities in there. You might have a small church where you can have 3 kids in your respite program. You don't have to have, 50 kids. Programs, we've seen our respite programs go from 3 kids to over 100 kids. And so it's pretty incredible that it's expandable. It can meet your need, because it's about your church rallying around these families and building relationship with them and beginning to learn about them. It's important to build your team, so when you're thinking about doing special needs ministry, please don't go after the parent that has a child with a disability and say, well, they need to run this program because they have one of those kids. if God calls many families and parents and loved ones that have been impacted by disability to perhaps lead ministries or start ministries, but don't make that assumption without their permission and without their calling or desire to do that. But it's important to build your team. We have found that with respite care programs that we've seen some of the most unlikely people come forward, and they're usually not people already serving in children's ministry. We've seen top level executives, senior citizens, high school students. It's a great intergenerational ministry that people respond when you say, hey, here's the need and here's something you can do about it. People come forward, and then you begin to build your army for Sunday morning. It really has worked incredibly well. And you might say, we don't have enough volunteers, but again, that's a way. This is a tool where you can, if you say to people, hey, I need people to work with kids with special needs on Sunday morning, you're going to have people saying, I've never done that before. I am not equipped to do that. But if you say, hey, would you come hang out with some kids on a Saturday for 3 hours, or a Friday night or Sunday afternoon, because we need to give these moms and dads a break, you begin to change the narrative a little bit, and people, that's not as intimidating to them. And we're going to train you, we're going to equip you. And it's okay if you fail. You've got an opportunity to learn about these kids. It's such a great place to recruit volunteers to serve for that. And even during the pandemic, we've been recruiting and equipping people to serve. The activities can be easy. You could do the same activities every month and the kids would not care, because it's all about the relationship, so you can have crafts and stories and dress up rooms, and the list can go on, music time, but it's all about the relational part of it that makes it so rewarding for the kids. Safety and risk management is something you need to think about, because you've got parents leaving the kids and they're leaving the property. So that's a little bit different than doing ministry on Sunday morning, where they're, they're in the congregation. So you could just kind of call them and they'll be over in a minute or two. So need to think about that. A budget, it doesn't have to be expensive to do a respite care program. You can put a list out of items that you may need, toys. You can use the items that you already have in your kids ministry. So you'll find too that people are often willing to contribute, to help fund the program. But like I said, it doesn't take a lot of money to run a respite program. Great ministry to the siblings. We said earlier, disability affects the whole family, and the siblings need that one-on-one care as well. I look back at our situation with our son and our daughters. They had to grow up awfully fast, becoming little caregivers themselves, but they had unique needs as well. And I'm thankful for people God put in our life that could love them and reach them when mom didn't have enough time, when everything was geared toward taking care of Nathaniel. Oftentimes our girls missed out on what mom could give them at that time. So I'm thankful that in the case like this with respite, you can minister to the siblings and give them attention so they don't go looking for it in other places. You might say, we're not ready to handle all the families. Marie, you're telling me all these families are out there that need respite. Well, the great thing about doing a respite program, you can do it by reservation. So people just don't show up at your church. And so you can kind of control that, who's coming in. And even if another church is doing something nearby, God has a plan for every congregation, and every part of the body. Every church functions as a body. So if you don't have kids with disabilities in your church, or people with disabilities in your church, it's like you're cutting off part of the body. You're cutting the earlobe off. You're cutting off the nose. You're cutting out an important part of the body. So every church should be doing something to include people with disabilities, because we're the body of Christ. It's not us and them, but it's a matter of that we are working together. We're working together to find ways to be inclusive, that everybody can find a place to be in the body of Christ, So you might be asking, okay, now you're convinced, man, this is something I should really look into. How do I begin? Well, I'm glad you asked. So one of the things we do is help churches start respite care programs in order to help equip you just to be better equipped to minister to families impacted by disability. And so, after having been in church staff for 10 years and understanding all the things that you have to do to run a typical ministry, we've tried to make it really easy for you to know how to minister to this community without having to do everything for it. So currently we partner partner with churches in 37 states, and we've trained churches in England, Singapore, working with churches in South Africa right now. And we do online on-demand training. And so it's very easy for you to do it from your church. Our longest standing church has been operating for 17 years. It was our first Buddy Break pilot that began 17 years ago here in Orlando, Florida, and has gone through several changes in leadership, and yet the church has still continued on 17 years later doing the ministry. So we do training. We have a basic leadership training, which our next one is going to be next Thursday, April 29th. Would love to invite you to be a part of it. What we've done, we kind of put all the pieces together for you to be able to do a turnkey ministry. Like, you don't have to think about, how do I do a respite care program? We've thought about all the risk management, the safety. We have an online database where your families plug in so that you don't have to think about developing forms and everything. And those forms then can be used on Sunday mornings, because they may fill out 8 pages, but we can scale it down to just find out on Sunday mornings you want a 1-page bio about the kids, and you can be able to scale that down. So we're trying to help equip you to minister to this community year round. And so we have the tools, we teach you how to use the tools, and then we want to see you run and fly and cheer you on. So there's 2 options for you to be involved. You can attend the training next week if you like for $49. It's just a one-time, it's 6 hours of intense training on how to do a respite care program. And then if you decide that you want to become a part of the Buddy Break network and become a family. So like, in Central Florida here, we have like 25 churches that do Buddy Break every month during non-COVID times. And so oftentimes families that really, really need a break, they're going to multiple programs. It's the body of Christ working together to help this community. So they may go to a Baptist church one week, a Presbyterian church the next week, because they need that break. And so we also offer online coaching and use of the national online database. We get the starter kit, unlimited training. You have use of all of our on-demand training. And there is no annual fee that we require for you to be a partner with us. We do ask you to consider taking us on as a missions outreach, because our heart is to reach families across the country, and now internationally as well, that are impacted by disability. So we often ask you to just consider taking us on as a missions outreach. So those are 2 ways to get involved. And maybe your church still hasn't opened. It's really interesting how our country is so different. In Florida, we're a little bit more open. I just came back from Michigan and Ohio, and those places aren't as open as Florida. But this is a great time of equipping, but even within Florida, we have some of our programs that aren't running now, but we've launched 4 new programs within the last 7 weeks. So that's been kind of incredible, just the difference it is. But this is the perfect time for your church to begin to learn how to get better equipped in this time where you have an opportunity to do that, to give families a break and to get equipped to welcome these kids into your congregation. So we have a few other tools that are free. Everything we do for families is free, and you're welcome to use our tools. We created some virtual buddy breaks during the pandemic about a year ago. Our partners around the country submitted different stories and crafts and all kinds of music, and we put together 3 programs, virtual buddy breaks, so you can access those on our YouTube channel, Nathaniel's Hope YouTube channel, and share them with your kids in your congregation. They don't have to be a part of Buddy Break for that. We've got a birthday club. All of the kids that are part of Buddy Break program, they get into the birthday club, and they get a little Bearing Hope bear when they first join. We have over 16,000 kids in our birthday club from 50 states and several countries as well, and they get cards on their birthday every year. We try and remember kids that are getting forgotten. So, and this is a free tool for you. Just you can go to nathanielshope.org and register to be part of the VIP membership club. If you know a child who's gone to heaven, we have a Hall of Hope where they can post their child's picture, and we send cards on what would be their birthday and their homegoing date. So these are just some resources for you. Shameless commercial. My husband and I have written a book called Hope Lives that tells the story of our son from womb to heaven, told from his perspective to know what it's like having a child with special needs and understanding that journey. It's written from the kid's voice, so it's very unarming, it's disarming for people. And there's all kinds of tips on how your church can minister to this community. So that's available. during the pandemic, we've been doing all kinds of creative things. That we've had VIP Pizza Palooza parties where we've had drive-through pizza parties. If you're interested in doing that, we'd love to help equip you to do that. And we're going to be rolling out a new program called Nathaniel's Neighbor within the next month or so here. So keep an eye out for that as well. And again, this is a way to care for families during the pandemic and beyond. So, you know, we're here to equip you. As I said before, our basic leadership training is next week. And I think Carrie is going to be coming back here if I give her permission to come back here. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, social media. That's always a good thing to do. But anyway, those are some of the things happening. If you have questions, you can throw them in on the side. But I think you're going to give something away, Carrie, right?
Yeah, I am. I enjoy getting to give things away. So we're going to do that here in just a minute. But all those resources Marie just talked about, from the birthday club to VIP Pizza Palooza, the Hope Lives and the Hall of Hope and more, you can find on our website at nathanielshope.org. Marie, can you type that into the chat real quick?
I think I can.
Awesome. And if you have any questions or anything, we're going to open up a Q&A here, but feel free. You can also email those to us, buddybreak@nathanielshope.org. But before we go into Q&A, so you guys can leave if you need to after this, we want to give away one of our $49 options to attend our BLT. So I've got my little spinning wheel here on my phone and put names into it. So I'm going to go ahead.
Wait, Carrie, you're going to give away a free basic leadership training. You mean that $49?
Free basic.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So
okay.
I'm going to spin my wheel of names.
Here we go. That means that next Thursday, if your name is on here, you get to spend 6 hours with us for free and learn all about respite care. And if your name isn't called, then it's James Lee.
Oh, look, and James was saying, pick me, pick me. So James,
oh, look at that. That is awesome. And where's James from? James, where are you from?
James, where are you from?
I'm trying to look
Hawaii. Oh, wow.
Hawaii, that's awesome. We just trained a church. Yeah, we just trained a church in Hawaii, I think last month, another church. So that is awesome. That is very exciting. So aloha, aloha.
It's a little bit early there. All right. So thank you guys for joining. We want to open up for a Q&A right now. If you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. If you have to head out, feel free to do so. But thank you for joining us. But any questions?
And Carrie, I was going to say, if they did not win, you are welcome. I don't think I mentioned this. You can join us next week for $49. And you can think about whether you are interested in, like, after you go through the training and you say, oh, wow, I'd like to join the Buddy Break Network. How many months do they have to apply their $49?
Right now, during COVID, we've extended it to 6 months. Typically, it's 3 months, but right now we have it 6 months that if you go through that BLT at the $49 per person, then you can go ahead and apply that to your kit within that 6 months.
Right. So it's a good time to kind of learn more about what this is and how your church can do it, because it does take several months to launch a program if you're doing that. But listen, I just want to encourage you that if you are just look at your families right now, especially during COVID, look at their families and find out ways that you can minister to them, you know, without a program, if your church is closed, open, whatever, but just begin caring for these families and look at the needs one-on-one to meet their needs.
All right.
So I guess there's no questions, Carrie.
One last chance for questions. Go ahead and put those in the chat. If not, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you have, like I said, if you have a question that pops up in a little bit, please feel free to email buddybreak@nathanielshope.org, or you can call us at 407-857-8224. All right, James, I'll be in touch with you to get you set up for that for next week.
Okay, God bless you.
Bye.
Bye.